Hello everyone and welcome to Heart and Hand the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar and I am your host as always. And joining me this week to, well, let's be honest, sit and go, why hasn't he been sacked yet, is Martyn Ramsey. Hello Martyn.
Hi David, how we doing?
Season debut for you, I think, this year.
Might be. Always good times to come in.
Yes, well, I mean, you're a busy man, you know, you've got a job and we're going to speculate on the job that's being done by the current Rangers manager. Look, first things first, I think he should be sacked and I don't really know anyone who doesn't, but maybe you're about to buck the trend with me.
No, I wouldn't be bucking the trend on this specific point. We might get into some of the more general issues affecting the club and some things that just won't go away long term, but he cannot sell what he wants to sell. I think we've spoken about it before. I genuinely think he is a kind of genuine guy who's very serious about what he does, but he is nowhere near the coach he thinks he is, and he can't communicate what he wants. Definite arguments again about whether he has enough of the type of players with the strength of personality, blah, 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 to help that. And there's not a successful coach in the world, in the history of the game, who hasn't had their own lieutenants who spread their message and build confidence in those around them. I think we've got plenty of players who could be confident around a stronger spine. He could absolutely argue he doesn't have that, but it just isn't going to happen. And it's either wishful thinking, you're looking for that incredible Hollywood ending. My word, it's set up like one of those Hollywood films, certainly. It's just kind of keep pushing to the absolute darkest hour before it all turns around. I just don't buy that he can make that happen. It would be different. I'm sure so many fans have said this, but I knew it was going to be bad. I mean, I think I've said this before in other shows, live shows or whatever, completely budgeted for a really, really sticky spell. If you're ripping something up completely, it's going to actually look worse before it looks better, just by definition. I couldn't have imagined, even in my worst nightmares, this kind of start. I'm talking dropping points at Fir Park and Paisley or whatever, maybe not getting to the Europa League group. But at least being able to see something, at least being able to see patterns of play that, you know, just hasn't quite firing yet. But okay, I'll give that more time to gel. And I don't know what you think, Davey. I mean, all the things we were told about Martyn, I say told about Martyn as if he's come from fucking Scontorigo or somewhere. We know who he is. We've seen his teams play. There were a few things, but the one thing that kept coming back is he won't change. And he's just dogmatic, and he will just continue and continue and continue along that line. That's not been the case at all. He's been chopping and changing and throwing shit at the wall and being the tough guy, being the nice guy, back and forward since about the hour mark at Fir Park. Mm-hmm. And again, I'd probably have a lot more time, respect, patience if he was just saying, no, this is it. See these players that aren't playing? Yeah, they don't fit. So why would I play them? Get them out the door. And I'm not budging on that. I don't care what the noise is. This is the way. Because that's kind of what we were told. And we'd be shit at set pieces and maybe just a wee bit too ponderous at the start before it all clicks, blah, blah, blah. But he hasn't been like that at all. Where he has at other clubs, because, shock horror, this is far, far too big a job for him. And therefore he has given away all these principles and all the things that he's kind of talked about, and he loves to talk. In that kind of linked English way that managers deploy these days. But when the pressure goes, that first week, Davey, the first week from, you know, the Advocate at Fir Park, the Warburton after Dundee the week after, just flip-flopping all over the place. And that's a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, it is. But desperation makes people do desperate things. He's not a stupid man, right? No matter what people might think of him as a coach, he isn't. He knows, right? I mean, God, even if you were a stupid man, if you've got the vast majority of 50,000 people singing that you should get to fuck, then you're going to realise they don't particularly like me. So, you know, the message was sent loud and clear and repeatedly on Saturday. I don't know about you, but I have never heard any instance of all the football I've watched. I've heard you're getting sacked in the morning, sang by away fans. I've never heard the home fans join in. Yeah,
and this is it's something you've said before, and we talk a lot in our Premier League show on Patreon, that when a club or fans, when a support does not buy the new appointment, he has to hit the ground running. Now, again, because of the changes that Rangers were trying to make, going from a series of quite pragmatic coaches to more of an idealist, and the kind of transition of players and all the rest of it, it was never going to be a fast start. Never in a million years. Even if it was one of those types of manager with a CV that the vast majority of the support just simply couldn't argue with. It was never going to be that way. So a bit of an inevitable kind of disaster, I guess. But the reason we haven't heard that kind of visceral reaction, even under Clement and Gio, was because they gave us something at the start. And it was a kind of, oh, fuck, right, you can't survive getting beat off at Queen's Park. But, I really wanted this to kind of work out because he had shown something pretty much immediately. Gio showed something pretty much immediately. And, was, as we know, a couple of penalty kicks away from a statue.
Mm.
So there's credit there that eventually support has to say, right, okay, it's untenable. That's a real shame, but that's kind of what it has to be. We don't even have that. As beautiful as those moments against Pils and Ware, it doesn't quite add up to having that kind of sustained credit in the bank that fans are wrestling with internally when things start to go south. So that's why I've never heard that. I mean, who is? I mean, a young Ali McCoist? Is that the only either player or manager that's had such a kind of visceral reaction amongst the Rangers home support? It was pretty new territory for me. I'm sure I might be missing something, but can't think offhand tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I started watching Rangers consciously really about 83, 84, and I think I missed maybe the worst of that just before it. But since then, no. There's been a lot of disappointments, been a lot of managers people didn't like, but never like this. Never with this vitriol aimed at them. And that's the thing now, it's just that it can't work. I happen to think, Martyn, that the Rangers owners, we talk about the board interchangeably, but this decision is Kavanagh and Martyn, that will make this decision. And I wonder if there is an element of, look, when we were looking at buying this club, one of the things we noticed was that they react too much to support our pressure, to support our mood, support our unhappiness. Now, we understand that because the previous guys in charge were Rangers fans and we're often surrounded by Rangers fans in their workplace or social life or whatever. But we're not that. We are cold and calculating, and above that, we can maintain overview in difficult circumstances. And I wonder if it's entered that stage of, we are not going to bow to this, we're going to show who runs this club. If so, I think it's counterproductive, because two things can be true at the same time. They may want to do that, and for all I know, it might be beneficial in the long run, but they are backing the wrong horse in which to do it. They're picking the wrong fight. They're dying on the wrong hill.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. It'd be fascinating to know what those discussions are like, but almost certainly they would have come in, and when they were planning the takeover and starting the job, we are categorically not doing this every year. So whoever we entrust to, get the manager, whoever that manager is, we will show that support come hell or high water. And it's easier to do so for the reasons that you mentioned. And that's just how it's going to be. And I would be stunned if that hasn't been the kind of conversation, the kind of assurances that he has been given by them. But I am also sure that those assurances were given to the last three Rangers managers, and indeed the last four, that no matter how bad it gets, we understand the task at hand. And all of these all these words that we all nod, and back in June we're like, yep, that makes sense, and we're just going to have to kind of buckle down. And when the shit hits the fan, no one can last till, the third week of August. So I get that. And you're right that two things can be correct. The principle I do think is correct. I grudgingly accept that this annual search for Walter, the kind of pragmatic coach who can come in and sort us out the back and get a bump and, get us back and running, and then eventually we'll kind of build a more kind of more modern team. It doesn't work, because you're playing into the margins. You're trying to beat Scottish teams at their own game, and that's where you get too stodgy. And for all the fun, those isolated fun instances, I suppose, at Parkhead, the 3-2 just there, the Katic game or whatever, and in Europe, which is clearly where that's reaped its rewards, you have nonsense at Rugby Park and at Tynecastle and Ross County, because you're just too stodgy, and you invite, as I said, those margins too. So I that's maybe more where I come from, David, and I know it's maybe where you come from, but I can understand the need to make that leap to something that's a lot more possession-based attacking, open, blah, blah, blah. And that will inevitably have a hugely difficult beginning for the reasons mentioned. So their principles are fine, but I agree with you. You can still have just got the wrong guy, the wrong salesman. Because what are we really talking about here? If we're being honest, we're being realistic and trying to be sober. Rangers don't have a spine yet. We've spent a lot of money, and some of it I think will be good, not all of it, but we'll see. I think we're 2 years away from having the squad with the kind of personalities that we need. Personally, I'm happy to be, dissuaded on that. So that's a long time. So who do you need then? You need someone who genuinely has the size of personality, charisma, CV, whatever, just to keep people ticking away, if that's at all possible. Because I think we're all full of shit when it comes to talking about patience, to be honest. But if it is someone that just kind of grabs you and says, I see what they're doing, that's fine. They don't have that guy. So I can understand them wanting to be absolutely firm on that out of principle, but it's not going to make the situation any less inevitable, sadly. And it's the tough one. It's but we're not immune to that. Most football clubs have those moments, I'm sure. I can understand the resistance, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's currently delusional, really, to think, because you are going to have to sack him, right? And we know this, right? We are correct in this, whether it be one more defeat or whatever. And the reason we know it is we've seen it. We know when the atmosphere turns. It's a wee bit like at school when you learn to read the atmosphere, that at any given moment it can change and somebody's liable to end up with a burst mouth. We can read the runes and the atmosphere and whatever you want to call it at Ibrox. And we know this. This is, we've seen this before, or we've felt this before. So they are going to have to do it, because unless he now goes on a game, unless he practically goes undefeated to the end and wins, actually, not even undefeated to the end of the season, the next defeat, and at the moment it looks a lot closer than the next win, will cause it all to happen again. And then Rangers fans, traditionally, it's one of my pet peeves, as I hear, Rangers fans don't protest, Celtic fans protest. Rangers fans protest in the most effective way that football fans can protest, which is they stop going. They stop paying money. And they say, no, you're not getting my money, you're not getting my time while you're serving this pish up. And that is what causes change at football clubs, Martyn. It's not marches before the game. It's not banners. Believe it or not, it's the thing that a football fan has in their armoury, or, their weapon, is their feet.
And harder to do when the vast majority of the stadium is season ticket and they've got your money. Europe, clearly, I think, was always going to be a very interesting barometer of that strength of feeling. Saturday night will be a very interesting barometer of that strength of feeling. Even if people have paid for tickets, they might just not go. And empty seats it looks dreadful, right?
Yep, and they're not buying the sundries. There's no spend in the stadium.
Absolutely.
Hospitality wasn't sold out on Saturday, mate,
no,
right?
I know, which is
unheard
of for Hearts.
Unheard of for Hearts in September. When this early in the season, unheard of. These are the things that they take notice of.
And you would expect, again, the type of guys coming in, that are in, sorry, that's ultimately the driver. So I completely agree. Yep, full of mirth for the big walks to the stadium from the pub and still go to the game anyway and all that. So you're absolutely right. So with what we got here, a kind of Mexican standoff between the support and the new owners. I mean, they're hardly in the door. It's a right old shambles. And Davey, the biggest disappointment, because again, clubs get managerial appointments wrong all the time. They're probably more wrong than they are right over the course of football. It happens to the best. So in and of itself, this appointment, you dust yourself down and kind of go again. My biggest disappointment, biggest worry, given the guys who come in, given that they're no amateurs in sport, they're involved in sport, they're involved in football, involved in British football, and even at Leeds, a kind of a rocky start, but they showed learning, they showed patience, and obviously they did a fantastic year last year. I really had hoped, and maybe incorrectly assumed, that these are diligent people who do their homework and understand that this club, you can't just put it all into the computer, see what comes out the other end, and it'll work here. Like it or not, it is not the same as pretty much anywhere else, with a few exceptions. And they just don't appear to have done that. Some of the signings would indicate lessons have not been learnt, that you don't have to experience, you don't have to be in the building to know. You just look at the kind of players that we've signed that haven't quite kind of worked out. And that's a huge, that is a huge worry and a real disappointment. I'll be honest, because none of us are professionals, but a lot of us had huge fears about this, and that they're kind of coming home to roost. So, yeah, it's really, really, really depressing times. There's no way getting around it.
Yeah, and I keep coming back to, maybe this is just me overly simplistic thinking, but I do keep coming back because I hear all the reasons. He's trying to change too much. They're trying to change too much too quick. Wrong players. Thelwell doesn't understand the club. And all of them are valid. But I do just keep coming back to, sometimes Occam's razor reply. Maybe he's just not a very good manager. He's won 2 games out of his last 25 league matches across 2 clubs. He's only been a coach for, 3-4 years? Maybe he's just not that good.
I tend to kind of resist that binary view of it, that one is either good or wholly good or wholly bad. I think they just have different levels, and he did have a level. There's no question that he was successful in the Championship in a very impressive way, and it should have been obvious to anyone at Southampton that if they just continued that approach, they were going to get what they got, because they didn't have the resources to do that in a completely different league. So again, I go back to the pressures of the job, mate. It's all good having these principles, all well and good having done it before at different places. This is really, really difficult for the best. It is really difficult. But the caveat I'll always throw him is that, we know for a fact that they knew we needed men. We needed leaders. And they haven't provided them. We needed men, they've given them children. Now, we'll see what Cornelius turns out like, and obviously I'm a huge fan of Miovski at the very end. I think it's probably fair to say that Rothwell is not the player he looked last year.
Yep.
And that's all you can really do, is it? It's like, well, he was great. I mean, maybe that injury late in the season has still been a kind of knock-on effect. I don't know. So that's a problem. And I don't really care who the manager is if you don't have a spine. I think it's kind of academic. We're talking about how close we can be second. But as he's selling, was he ever going to be able to kind of command this club and this group of players through very choppy waters, asking a lot of them to do things that they're not very well suited to, at least not well suited to immediately? No, and it's just horses for courses. and that was the big issue. But we're back to that problem. Who is the right guy? Is there such a thing? Given we still lack a lot of personality on the pitch, right through the team. So anyone looking for a quick fix, as fans always do, they're still going to be disappointed, I think. But let me be utterly clear: no one, not even me, could have foreseen such a disaster. And it's just untenable. There's just no way back.
Watched that game back this morning. It wasn't the most fun experience I've ever had, and I thought the first half was bad. But having watched it, sans emotion, if you like, it was worse than I thought, because this isn't a football team. This is a side that's sort of football adjacent, and it's not that they're not grasping. I think or it's not just that they're not grasping what he's asking them to do. They have forgotten how to do things that they knew how to do previously. They are confused, very obvious. And because of that, they're very tentative. And he speaks about the atmosphere in the ground, but I would also counter that this looked like a side that didn't know what they were supposed to be doing had nobody been in that stadium. Mm-hmm. I thought it looked like a side who were, is it this? Am I supposed to do this? Or right, no, actually, shit. Oh, no, I've wasted so much time thinking about it. I need to turn back and start again. And we see this regular dance of goalkeeper to centre-back, to goalkeeper to full-back, to centre-back, play into midfield, lost, the attack, we try and win it back, and it starts again. And a side that finds it almost impossibly difficult to make chances, to create anything, but are so porous at the other end and so simple to play through. And I think this is it for me with Russell Martyn. All the factors that you mentioned there, I agree with. And I know it's a very difficult job, and there is no instant quick fix really available. But this is way below. I never like that description. This isn't even par, because par's all right. This is way over par. That this is trying to continue that metaphor clumsily. I mean, this is like trying to improve your golf score by just picking up the ball and chucking it. You've completely forgotten the basics on what you're supposed to be doing. It doesn't function like a normal football team. And watching it back, it's quite clear. It's like everything that you're supposed to do looks impossibly difficult to you. You look as though you either don't understand it or you're struggling to do it, or in fact, both. And like I say, I was watching that and I was like, you can't even call this a performance, because it's so far off what I would expect from any side in the Premier League. They don't look as though they understand what the purpose of the whole sport is.
Yeah, it's paralysis. A kind of collective paralysis. And again, I go back to being the salesman and just saying, look, this will be all right. You'll be fine. I've got your back. As long as we keep doing this, and they do keep doing this, and you can see that they're trying something. Not that it's absolutely going to click in the first 6-8 weeks of the season, but they're trying to do that, and they completely buy it, and they're still full of life, and they're moving it with zip. We were slow, but we've been slow for years, Davey. Mm-hmm. And it's because of that general fear, and because to be quick is risky. To move the ball about, that first time passing, is risky. You might lose it, and you're in transition, and oh God, what have you got at the back? So they wait, and the momentum is gone. So that's the biggest takeaway. If you are an owner looking at that, saying, "Yep," you can possibly ride out some. If you're just doing the Wikipedia sweep of assessment, and you just look down and go, "My God, that's horrendous. Look at the league table." It doesn't always tell you the full story. It's always a snapshot. And then you look at the performance and say, right, we can see it. But you're absolutely right. We can't. They're not buying it. And because they're not buying it or can't do it, they're fucking terrified. And they're a team that are just looking for a break on Saturday. And weirdly, Davey, I was kind of of the opinion that first goal doesn't lose it. And I think if we had, I think we might have been actually all right. But you're looking for a break. You're looking for something to can happen. The great efforts from Asgard and Gisama, but they were
individually
from far out, and they were they were super efforts and they were very close. But that's not high XG, I don't imagine, because we've not worked Hearts into a frenzy and pulled them about all over the place and creating easy chances. So they're a team that is just desperate for a break for the next 5-6 weeks, and then you start getting momentum. We've seen that happen in football before, but just absolute crapshoot. And to compound that, it was a team that very much did not get the breaks, and in and of itself, take the result out of context or the game out of context. This podcast is probably someone else being utterly incandescent, apoplectic with rage about refereeing decisions. And people barely mention it because fans exist in context and they're just exhausted and angry about far bigger things than that. So he can't buy a break. He needs a lot, but when you're relying on that, game's pretty much up.
Yeah, now that does lead us into another discussion, and this is, I think, something that there will be listeners, and I know this for a fact before we start talking about refereeing, that will be going, wasn't it referees why we lost? And it wasn't. You're totally right. I think Rangers would have found a way to lose that game on Saturday regardless. However,
it would have been under a different manager. That 90 minutes, that would have been. We'd be talking about referees. We wouldn't be talking about the anemic performance or anything else. So it's part of the collective exhaustion with the whole thing and lack of belief in the whole thing that we're not talking about referees.
Yeah, but
this time last season, we are utterly furious.
I think though we do need to talk about the refereeing that we saw at the weekend, because there are questions of judgment and some things are subjective. The penalty, for example. So I'm not going to harp on about that. I didn't think it was a penalty. I didn't think there was enough contact. The ref did, and VAR are not going to overturn a ref unless it's absolutely clear. The goal that Rangers scored, I think, again, referees just automatically blow when they see a keeper being jostled in any sense of the word. And again, they're not going to overturn it, but there was nothing wrong with that. That's something, though, that does happen across football. The handball in the lead up to the opening goal, there's no way that you can get that wrong. The ref shouldn't get it wrong on the park. But when he does, VAR have got to step in and say, oh, by the way, we've just checked this. It's ran right down his arm. There's zero debate about this. He's used that to control it, and he's tried to as well, because he's stuck his arm out to do so. And then he's used it to guide it into his path. And from there, he's gone on, ran and scored within the same section of play. There was no phase of play thing at play here. You cannot miss that. It's impossible to get that one wrong, and yet they did. There's no subjective here, Martyn. In fact, I actually checked this with a qualified referee. That's not one he would even... VAR should have intervened and not even sent him to the monitor. Factual handball.
Yeah. I've seen it since, obviously, and I completely agree. My feelings on most things. It's a matter of opinion. That one is a baffling one. You're right on that where you sit, and therefore you saw it. I'm to the back of it. I assume just because of Shankland's body shape that he's handled that, and kind of just disappointing the way he obviously was able to score the goal, and how the lack of intensity that their centre halves employed. But I kind of assumed, that I'm sure that was a handball, and Shankland looked a wee bit downcast, but he muted, I think, in terms of his kind of celebration. I think he probably thought it might in fact be that way. So that was a huge surprise, but again, bigger issues at play than just that. It was, when it's not going for you, it really isn't. The goal, anytime I see the ball spin up in the air like that in the box, I just assume there is going to be a foul blown for whether there's a foul or not, and have for about 30 years. So that certainly predates the existing kind of VAR arrangements and whatever. But that was a sore one. So I guess when the manager comes in, as he did to your press conference, and says 3 big decisions in the game, you're talking about that 90 minutes. That's what he's there to talk about. I can kind of understand that, but it's missing the bigger point, obviously, and that isn't going away.
No, I think we get continually fucked over by referees, and I think it's because it's easy to give decisions against us. And I think we witnessed a decision at Rugby Park. It's a lot easier to give decisions for them. Although I will say, Matthew McDermott, who was the VAR there, he has already this season in September on Willie Collins' wee Friday Night Sky show, already 2 apologies have had to be made and 2 admissions of a wrong decision from him on VAR. Not involving Rangers or Celtic. He's just atrocious. He should not be a Grade 1 referee.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's harder to get out of Grade 1 refereeing than it is to get into it, because once they're there, they're so desperate to keep them. Whereas you really should be taking this guy out and saying, you're nowhere near ready for this, because you don't know the rules, you continually make mistakes. And that's before we even get to issues that, as a Rangers fan with my blue-tinted specs on, I really do believe we are refereed in a different way, and it's something the club has continually failed for a number of years to address. And I'll give you an example. A guy said to me last night, he said, "Davey, you need to highlight this." To who? Who do I need to highlight this to? That refs are against us, for example. Who's this great neutral observer who's going to come in and say, "Oh, this is offside. You couldn't have been aware of this." It's that thing of, this is unfair, therefore someone must be able to do something about it. The SFA, no, they don't care, right? Celtic have deliberately engineered this, they don't care. The rest of Scottish society does either hates Rangers, supports Rangers, or doesn't care about football. Who do I need to highlight it to? Who's going to come in and change everything? The only people who can fight back against this are the club. And again, they're not going to listen. The SFA aren't going to go, "Oh, that a Rangers supporting podcast thinks that we're bent." That's not going to happen. And it is just this continual howling into the void about it. Yeah. But it's like, the club have got to deal with this. If we're continually in the wrong end of decisions and they feel there's something going on, and I think it's bloody clear that they do, then address it. But, stop kind of expecting that people are going to take what you or I or Rangers supporters say, because they're going to just write it off the same way every FA does, is go, "Well, that's just one-eyed because you support the club."
Yeah. I would agree there's nothing the podcast can really do on that. I would agree that it's just such an easy life for officials under pressure. You're talking about your boy there, not even Rangers or Celtic games, just making decisions in the heat of the moment that were wrong, because he just can't handle that responsibility, even at a kind of lower level. To what extent the club can do much about that, I'm not. But this is a long-standing chat, isn't it? About if you fight angrily, again, to whom?
That's fair.
It's more about winning friends or influence people, yeah?
Changing the environment, yeah. Yeah, that's fair. As I say, I just think sometimes people they say that to me with it, I think, considering it through. We need to get it out. To whom? Right? In Scotland, people that know don't care. They either agree with you already, but they can't influence it, or they know what they're doing and they don't want to change, or they don't care. And it's not like somebody's going to come up from England and say, "Well, this is totally, we are here as the referee fairness ombudsman."
Yeah, you're talking about Ofcom or something like that.
Yeah,
you're talking about an independent Ofcom regulator. Yeah. That doesn't, in this asylum of a footballing country that we live in, is above all that, and what a Supreme Court. It's just this is a long, far bigger discussion about how exactly Rangers position themselves back into a position of influence, that when they do speak, it matters and it counts. Because at the minute, the club have been. I mean, how many other statements do you want over the last few years? How many words do you want? Do you want it bigger? Do you want it to the point? Do you want it angry? Do you want it? It's pretty much the same situation as you are, as the host and owner of a a podcast. This is Rangers' position in the national game, and it goes back to a complacency and a hubris in the mid-90s where we were outsmarted, outthought, outmanoeuvred, and here we are.
Yeah, this is not a short-term change, unfortunately. But you do get the odd. I mean, you do get the people who just. I think they think they have agency, and they think I have agency or you have agency, and I wish we did. I wish it was up to us to change it, but it isn't. If it was, we would have done so already. So now we move on, Martyn. I think we move on with a lame duck manager. I also wonder if the players are now at that stage, because we've seen it at Rangers, but you've seen it at plenty of clubs before, that are sitting going, well, he's not going to last.
Yeah.
And you enter this weird stasis period where they go out and they try and win, don't get me wrong, but very unlikely to happen. We've got Hibs at the weekend. They're a good side. They're also ideally placed to take advantage of the things Rangers are bad at, and that they've got pace up front and can run in behind. It's a cup game. It's played to a finish. There's no halfway house of a draw that, like the Old Firm game, he can try and claim was somehow pretty good. Rangers will either go through or go out. I personally think you'll be very fortunate at Rangers if the crowd goes above 20,000. Maybe it will, because Hibs will bring a contingent. The people who do go are not in a particularly good mood. So there's a message being sent from people not in the stadium and a message being sent from people in it. And if Rangers lose, I just cannot see how it is in any way tenable that he does not get sacked. No matter how much they want to pretend that there's some Rocky Balboa style 15th round comeback coming here. The evidence at that point, sure. I mean, I think the evidence is overwhelming now, and I think there is an active denial among the higher echelons of Rangers about the situation. But that even then, that's going to be delusion to the point of absurdity.
Yep, I've got nothing much more to add to that. And because it's the Cup and the first opportunity to get silverware and build momentum and ahead of steam and all the rest of it, to lose that carries even more weight at this point of the season. I mean, what would you be seeing even if Hibs do nick a few offers and or one or two, whatever, because exactly that they've got pace and we don't at the back. But what do you take away from a kind of narrow cup defeat, which can happen again to the best teams, and we know the history of cup football. It does either delusion or just a refusal, really. That no, we've said this and therefore we'll stick to it because we're men of principle, blah, 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 blah. It's just going to get worse and worse. And you can see it online the last 48 hours, Davey, I think, that for the first time now, it's them that are in the crosshairs,
agreed.
Which is insane to be in this position. What, 3 months in?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the, I don't quite know if I've seen, an Andrew Kavanagh with a cross through it that we've seen for the, the board and manager and chief exec and director of football and all the rest of it. That is a wild position to be in, given the optimism, which is allowed, by the way, when you get that fresh investment and clean slate and everything else. Problem is, there's never a clean slate for fans because we are exhausted, because it's all cumulative and it doesn't start again in July. Mm-hmm. So it's mismanaged. Again, bad decisions happen to the best clubs in the world at some point. You're allowed to say, we believe in the route we're taking, we understand and we completely accept, and we're not going to get shaken off course in terms of the type of manager we want, the type of football we want, the fact that this season is going to be bumpy. We know that, and from our detached view, we can maybe see that in ways that the emotional driven fan can't. I don't have a problem if they come out and said that, but we made an error here. and we maybe need to look at who's making those decisions and sharpen them up, because we understand. Just admit, we run things through the software or the systems or whatever else, and we thought we were making valid footballing decisions. We understand that the pressures and the environment and the context here don't match up to that, and we're learning. And then you're back off and running again. To what, how far you get to run, because again, I don't think the guy is out there that satisfies what the fans want to see. But at least you could understand that, Davey. I would support that,
of course. Yeah.
But it's they've just got the wrong salesman, and it is a salesman. Sorry to keep coming back to that, but we are in for when you're ripping something up completely, and everyone has said for years and said in the start of June, the culture at the club is a disgrace, it's toxic, it needs completely uprooted, ripped apart. Of course, you're going to look shit at the start of a season when you've done that and you're completely building from scratch. This isn't just adapting what's already there, but not quite firing. This is complete root and branch stuff. But you need someone that is just huge, that carries you with them, and players, more importantly, with them. And they got that badly wrong. It was never the guy for that.
No, and as I say, I mean, people can take out of this what they wish. They can interpret it in a way. To be clear, I think he should be sacked. I want him to be sacked. Someone actually gave me a row last night for not making an official statement on it, Martyn. Like I'm the fucking...
there's nothing more 2025 than that.
And I said to him, I actually said to the guy, what do you mean official? I've said he should go. I've actually literally said to him in his face in the press conference that he should go. What difference does it make? He said, well, then it would be official. And I'm like... but
I want you to speak to your publicist, David. I want you to pick out a thoughtful, austere, pondering photo of you, black and white, personally. And then, you talk to her about the font that you're going to use over that photo, with a black background, obviously, and get it up on Instagram, and then and only then will we know where your colours are and what mast they're nailed to.
Yeah, I mean, I get it from an organisation. An organisation has to consult with its members and come to a majority decision. But in my case, it would be a case of saying, I've spoken to me, and I still agree with what I said yesterday. It's the all-round 21st century lunacy online that we live in at the moment. But yes, you can take it from me, officially, unofficially, the words from my mouth I agree with. And I think he should go. And I think he will go. And I think, all joking aside, I think it's inevitable that he will go. It's just a question when Rangers wake up to that reality. Martyn, thank you very much. It's been always enjoyable to talk to you. It's definitely been a thing, yeah. And I suspect sooner rather than later we're going to look back on Russell Martin's time
as a thing
that happened, and hopefully lessons get learned. But it seems at the moment they are going out of their way to avoid doing it. Anyway, folks, thank you very, very much for joining us here today. And just a wee bonus just before we go, we're very fortunate at the weekend to have a special guest with us at Ibrox. That was Norman Blake, who you may know from Teenage Fan Club. And Norman joined us in the press box. What a day to take him in. I'm there with one of my heroes,
mate.
Not Adam. And, I want to put on I want to show him me at my best, at my picking at things and stuff. And instead he got me at my for fuck's sakiest. So that was a disappointment. But here's what Norman had to say on it. We'll be back next week. Thank you very much for joining us. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Norman, you've just heard that press conference and it was no holds barred. It was full-on stuff. You've watched that game. You've heard. What were your thoughts?
Well, it's the first time I've witnessed a football press conference at all, but it was quite full-on. But yeah, the Rangers didn't play well at all. There didn't seem to be any organisation, and it's understandable that that there's so much anger towards the manager. So
Do you think he can't turn this round?
I can't imagine. I can't see it. It's unlikely, you know.
He looked to me like a man who knew.
Well, he did. You know, I've been in football stadiums in the past just to see that kind of reaction from the fans. I noticed that when the Hearts fans started singing "You're Getting Sacked in the Morning," all the Rangers fans started singing it too. You think there's no coming back for that. You wouldn't think, you know.
No, I mean, you've been in that stadium plenty over the years. You know, once the crowd make their mind up.
Aye, exactly that. So I guess time will tell. But you know, yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm sorry we couldn't give you a win, but
No,
you know,
that was thanks for inviting me along.
No, it's a pleasure.
Very interesting day and an eye opener.
You did see an epochal one, if nothing else.
Absolutely, I did. But like I said, the atmosphere in that press room there, for the press conference, that was, you know, it was quite something to witness.
Yeah, it was quite something to be involved
quite
in.
A bit of anger in there too in the press room. So
well, at the end of the day, it's you know, we're all just fans, and we're having to watch that. And you know, people always say to us, "It's like you get in for free," and I'm like, "Yeah, but we all spend thousands of pounds. We don't really have on advertising and whatnot in the club just to support the club." Yep. So yeah, we're pissed, but watching it. But no, it was a pleasure to have you. So thank you.
Thanks for inviting me, David, and I'll see you soon.